Okay, welcome, Deanna, to Eastern Kentucky University. With me today is Dionna Griffin-Irons. She's the former director of Outreach and Diversity at Chicago's legendary Second City Theater. If you're unfamiliar with Second City Theater, it was where so many comedy giants got their start. People like Bill Murray and John Belushi, Catherine O'Hara and Eugene Levy, currently in Schitt's Creek, Stephen Colbert, Steve Carell, Tina Fey, Amy Poehler, Keegan-Michael Key, Bob Odenkirk, Gilda Radner, and so many others. It's almost like if you find a big name comic, oftentimes they've got a Second City history. So welcome, Deanna, and welcome to Eastern Kentucky University.
Thank you, Dr. Ray. I'm so glad to be here. It's a pleasure to be here to share my knowledge with your students.
Thanks. So, Deanna, I've heard people describe the difference between stand-up comedy and improv as that stand-up comedy is a series of set-up punchline, set-up punchline, set-up punchline, whereas improv comedy is two or more actors getting on stage and then immediately creating this relationship within 30 seconds. And then that the funny is found within the relationship. Do you agree with that? Is that a good distinction?
I do agree with that. It is a quick, you could even establish a relationship in one sentence in about 5 or 10 seconds. Hey, mom, I'm leaving off for college. Immediately, we know the who, we know the situation, we know the relationship. So you can definitely establish it very, very quickly. Totally agree with that.
Okay, so what's the secret sauce to creating that relationship in 30 seconds or less? You gave that example, but are there some other elements to that formula that apply to people in real life creating relationships with someone they don't know?
Well, immediately when I think of creating good relationships, you are a bit thinking outside of the box, trusting your instincts. And by that, I mean, there's a give and take in relationships. There is sometimes a fear of not knowing who that other person is and how they're going to respond to you, what their expectation of you is. And what's important with relationship is that you are stepping outside of your comfort zone. You're stepping outside of yourself, like, okay, is this person going to like me? Are they going to receive me well? Are they going to validate me? All of those things. And ideally, you have to just be in the moment, trust yourself, trust your instincts, and just learn to go with the give and take that children do naturally. Children have most children, I see, because my boys are much older now, but they have no qualms about making friends with people that they don't know. They invite people to the sandbox. They get in the sandbox, and it's easy for them to do that. They share, they make offers, they give gifts, they want to connect. You see that happening organically. So humans have the ability to build community, to make connection organically. That is a part of who we are. It's something about, as we get older, as humans and adults, that childlike intuitive sense leaves, and we get into our head and start to censor ourselves. We start to judge. We start to put up walls, and that a lot of that is learned, and a lot of that is shaped by experience. So all of those dynamics affect and happen in the unique relationship building.
That's just absolute golden advice. And you reminded me that, of course, the origins of improv comedy came from teaching children, and I believe it was non-English speaking, immigrant children.
Yes.
Viola Spolin started that.
Exactly.
And so what do you think it is about the process of going from childhood to adulthood that is so common among us that we lose that ability to make friends as easily as a child does?
Oh, we lose the sense of play. Our sense of play gets diminished as we get older because we assume these new roles and identities. Status is put on us. We accept status. We want status. We have all these different isms: classism, racism, genderism, feminism. I mean, so sexism, all these different isms that have expectation attached to them, that have status, that have hierarchy that's built within them. And that changes everything because with status, it's why you see people who are a bit more closed off. They're more coming across an authoritative role. We've been conditioned to get out of that sense of play, and that we have to be serious, and that we have to be an adult. An adult is very different from child like play. However, it's the playfulness in childlike behavior is useful for adults, because that is where discovery, innovation, curiosity, imagination, creativity, all of that comes from. This idea of not having constraints, not thinking in a box, not putting ourselves into these for lack of better words, these confined roles. Yeah.
So now you've been teaching at Second City, we were talking earlier about for 2 decades. When you see students come in, adult students who have the constraint and aren't comfortable, how do you create that evolution to get them to be more playful and to not judge and to feel safe in that?
Oh, I am totally tricking the brain. I'm such a kid in myself, it's why I love playing with these kids, because it's like, oh, they're going to teach me, I'm going to learn something. I am tricking the brain. We're dealing with the ego here. And, the ego is very persuasive. Eckhart Tolle's book, talks a lot about the power of now and being in the moment. And it's the cunning ego that we're dealing with that says, oh, you're not good enough. You can't do this. And why are you doing that? It's that imposter syndrome that we're dealing with as adults, as creators, as writers, all these things that we're trying to slay. And all of us deal with that. It's kind of like we all deal with it in so many different areas of our life. Do I go to the gym? Do I go, am I going to go run? Am I going to eat healthy today? Am I going to do? And there's so many, it's that chatter, that voice inside of us that we have to tone down. So I know for me personally that my egos hasn't kicked in early in the morning. So that's when I do my writing, my early, brain dump of writing, because that voice isn't as active and I don't have as many distractions coming in. So part of it is recognizing when your ego imposter syndrome is at play. The other part is finding when you are in that we say don't get in your head, when you're not in your head. And so if the game and idea is that we should not be in our head so much, and that we should be in the moment. In the moment is where everything lives. That's where ideation lives. That's where trust lives. That's where innovation lives. That's where connection lives, in the moment. That's what we're trying to strive for, and make good habits of that kind of presence that will slay the ego.
Yeah.
I hope I hit that. I feel like I was kind of rambling a bit there.
It was brilliant. And the comment you made about writing early in the morning, first thing in the morning, I'm assuming probably everyone in the industry has read Julia Cameron's book, The Artist's Way.
Yes. Oh my goodness.
Blank papers, first thing, I forget if it was 30 minutes or 3 pages that she recommended every week to write before things start getting into your heads.
And I will add on to that, Julia Cameron. Now I love that book. That book was given to me when I was performing at the Second City Detroit, and it was given by one of the directors to all of the cast. Julia Cameron there's someone who actually coined that process of brain dump and morning pages, and it's Dorothea Brande, if I'm not mistaken. Dorothea Brande, Brande. And I believe in the early 1930s, if you pick up one of her books, she actually started and talks about that whole process. And Dorothea Brande is, I'm sorry, Julia Cameron is begging from and borrowing those ideas and philosophies that this woman from the early, I don't know if she was born in 1920 something, but in the 1930s, she wrote a book, and she talks about that. So she's one of the early ones that talks a lot about it. And then she refers to a lot of the great artists, Leonardo and their process, and really gets heavy into it. So yes.
I've got my homework as soon as we're done with this stuff. Now, I remember reading several years ago in a Harvard Business Review article about the value of one of the rules of improv, the yes and rule, and that very much applies to the workplace. Can you talk a bit about what that is, what the yes and rule is, and how do we use it, and why is it important in our interpersonal relationships?
Sure. Yes and is an easy improv formula that takes one person's idea, starts in agreement, and adds on to it. And it is not, and oftentimes, we will not hear everyone's idea. We'll want to interject. We'll want to dismiss someone's idea. But the yes and philosophy says that first, all ideas are good. All ideas are good. Everyone's idea, even if we may not, use what everyone is saying. Okay, we can't give raises next month, but let's get all ideas. Every human being that puts an idea, that interjects, and that has the courage to speak and say, this is my idea. Their idea and their contribution should be accepted and agreed upon. And so the philosophy is that everyone has great ideas to bring to the table. And we have to train ourselves to build and innovate by listening to the ideas and adding on to it. Taking whatever is given, whatever that given circumstance, whatever that idea is, and finding a way to incrementally build to the next thing and the next thing. Often, even with ourselves, ideas get, we don't even give them breathing space. They don't even get to take root because we're denying them and we're canceling them, and we're not giving ourselves nor our voice in the workplace a chance to even contribute to see, is this the $1 million thing? Is this the next innovative thing that we should try out? Well, if you take the yes and philosophy, it says, let's just have a brain dump. Let's have everyone share what's on top of their mind, and let's take out judgment. Let's take out there are bad ideas and just bring everything out, and then we'll throw it out to see what's possible.
Now, the students in the class that will be taking this will be school administrators. So within schools, there's always controversy. There's always difference of opinion. Someone's always happy. Someone's always unhappy. And also part of this course is also how to communicate with legislators on legislation. Again, people are going to fall on different sides of the coin. So if one of my students is a principal or is a superintendent or is a school administrator is engaging with a legislator and they're just on opposite sides of the coin, they're just outright different, great difference of opinion. How do you use yes and? How do you affirm the other person's opinion if you really deep down believe, I don't believe this, I totally disagree with this? Does that make sense?
Yes. I think, well, it's okay to disagree. We have to know that, we have to agree to disagree. That is great. And I think that it's okay. We have to remember and remind ourselves that it's okay to be uncomfortable. In fact, to have difference of opinion, and let's just take it even broader, different perspectives, different people, different backgrounds, different identities. You want to be challenged. We should be challenged. we should be uncomfortable. In fact, but of course, you know, our default is that we want it easy. We want to play it safe. We want to not push out of our comfort zone because we think that that's going to, I don't know, make us, I don't know. I think that we avoid that. I think that's just, it's fear-based behavior. It's what humans do. But conflict can be a great challenger to understand who we are and to get to the root of hearing all sides and what the problem really is, and allows us to hear different perspectives, beliefs, to get to what is really the difference. And sometimes it's not the surface of what people are saying outright, but sometimes it's, oh, I see. It's a matter of, you really want this and I want this. So how can we get to this together where you get what you want and I get what I want? But so often we're distracted by, nope, you didn't agree with everything that I said, or you don't like this and you like that. So we discount all of that and we don't unpack. And we have to unpack and pull back the layers to get to what is the true meaning, or what is it that we exactly want to say? What is the real obstacle? And you can only have that by having, like you said, differences of opinion and allowing ourselves to be okay with being uncomfortable, and knowing that uncomfortableness will move us to, let's find the greater way for us to work together.
I think that's so profound. I mean, the whole issue of being comfortable with being uncomfortable and accepting that as part of the growth process is so important. I went through the year-long improv program, and every minute of every class, I was uncomfortable. and after the end of each class, I was so glad I did it, but it was never easy. It was always just so uncomfortable.
Right. And isn't that, I mean, you think about, isn't that just kind of like with anything, when you first start running, you start trying, acting, you try, I mean, anything, it's like, oh my God, this, I don't know anything. And you feel lost because you want to have a sense of, I know where I'm going. It's like, yeah, it's how do you navigate without a map?
That's right.
But then you find your way.
Yeah, that's right. When you think about the other rules of improv or the techniques, do any other ideas come to mind in terms of what we can use in relationship building, in communicating with others?
Oh, I was thinking about this. I was trying to see if I had any notes here that I wanted to. Well, my work has been in inclusion. I've had, a couple decades of doing inclusion work. And oftentimes when we think of inclusion work, we think of others focus, which it is thinking for others, but it's also having the self-esteem and the courage to include ourselves into spaces and places that we may not have been around. Case in point, I remember having judgment and prejudice about when I had a jail experience in my 20s. And I remember being in the holding area and changing out of my clothes. I'm like, oh, what's it like in there? What are those people like? Like, oh, my Lord, it's like, I'm not like them. How dare, And the woman that I asked, she looked at me and she said, oh, you'll find people in there just like you. Everybody in jail ain't bad. And she really, in that moment, just slapped sense into me. I felt like, oh, I was just kind of believing that people were a certain way, and I had to relearn that we're all the same, only different. We're all the same, only different. And that really, those moments like that were moments that I had to remind myself that it was okay to insert myself, healthy place, healthy choices for sure, to insert myself and know that, that I can remove my impressions and prejudices moment to moment by making myself listen more, show up more, and do something different. Healthy choices again, that I want to, remind myself, because how I got there, whole different story in my 20s. But 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 it's important. I think the best thing is that we have to include ourselves. We have to remove our blind spot. As humans, we have a lot of blind spots. And I know a lot of that is based from, personally, I think, it's from fear, it's from past experience, and, the world. And how can we remove those blind spots and give ourselves permission to live more, to do more, and to push past what we think is possible?
That's beautiful. Thank you. There's one other question I want to ask you that you didn't know I was going to ask you, but since I got you in, with your history at Second City, do you have any funny stories that you could share, in terms of with like maybe some of the actors, the comics that we would have all heard of, or that have come through there? Anything that's shareable?
Funny stories. Oh my goodness. I worked with Chris Farley's brother, John Farley. And you talk about a person just constantly being in the moment. He would send around notes backstage before the show. Hey, honey, I would love to take you out on a date. He would just kind of just do these off the wall, oddball things and put these notes in our dressing, our dressing cubbies. And and this was his process. He would just work his way up into a character. He'd sometimes be an animal. He'd sometimes, just be going, take his hair and pull his hair all up over his head and walk around. I'm like, what if this guy is a big kid? What is he doing? He's like, but what he was doing was getting himself in the moment, and he was playing. And that sense of play, that sense of surprise, that sense of be ready for anything that comes your way is what I feel like John Farley, Chris Farley's brother, taught me when I was performing on stage, is that surprise yourself, bring out that kid in you, be an animal one day, and make your hair all over, do something completely off the wall, and see what you discover.
I'll try to do that with my hair, but I think it's going to be limited.
Right.
We're going to stop at this. That's such a beautiful high point. Could you just hold on? I'm going to stop the record button, but thank you for joining us here. I always extend the invitation. If you're ever coming out this way, come to Eastern Kentucky University. We'd love to have you. No one's ever taken me up on the offer yet, so you could be the first.
Okay.
So just hold on still, but thank you very much. This has been wonderful.
Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure.